Let me answer your question. Polite thing to do. I believe, for reasons that I hope we discuss later in the interview, that gold prices go over the course of a decade much higher from here, not merely higher from here. There are millions of Americans on fixed income who don't have the ability and haven't planned well enough to augment that income that are going to have an ugly time, in that I don't believe that you will ever see a gold-backed national currency.
When a man like Rick Rule says the next financial storm has already begun, ignoring him could cost you everything. Rick Rule, the man who's lived through every bull, every bust, and every gold rush, just dropped a warning that could change everything for Americans. He says the era of blind faith in the US dollar is ending, and a gold-backed national currency could soon rise from the ashes of a collapsing system. According to Rick, gold isn't just another trade. It's becoming the lifeline of real value, while the dollar continues to lose its soul in a flood of debt and inflation. But here's where it gets unsettling. He's calm. He's not screaming panic or chaos, because he's already prepared. The man who predicted cycles before most even saw them coming has already made his move. So what's he holding? More gold? More silver? Or is he quietly stacking dollars for one last play? In this interview, Rick Rule opens up about the future of money, the death of the dollar, and the golden opportunity that only a few will recognize before it's too late.
Give me choppy if it means up 60 and then down 6. I'm all for that kind of choppy. When people tell me, oh my God, the quote's off 5% or 6%, I have to say, compared to what? The market in the course of 2 years is up 100%. Give me 100 and take away 6. Sure. I can live with that at any point in time. I believe, for reasons that I hope we discuss later in the interview, that gold prices go over the course of a decade much higher from here, not merely higher from here. But people who hope to play that game, if that's what it is, need to understand that the market will be, first of all, volatile, but will also be, within a secular bull market, cyclical. I remember very well, Michelle, the decade of the 1970s, when the gold price went from $35 an ounce to a high of $850 an ounce, a 30-fold bull market. In the middle of that amazing move, 1975, the gold price fell by half. The quote slipped from about $200, pardon me, to about $100. A whole bunch of people who had been gold faithful at 200 lost the faith at 100. They got shaken out just in time to miss a move from 100 to 850. The point of all this is that, for reasons we'll discuss later, I think the gold price is going higher, but it will not be a smooth ride higher. They never are. And you made a great point. The gold price is really all about real interest rates, I think. By real interest rates, I mean the difference between the yield on the U.S. 10-year Treasury, the world's benchmark saving instrument, and the deterioration in the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar. I want to begin, and I think you agree with me in this, Michelle. I've listened to your work, that the CPI is not an accurate measure of the deterioration of the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar. Mm-hmm. Anybody who buys stuff can look at the price of consumer goods in the period, say, 2020 to 2025, and they know that we aren't suffering from 2.5% inflation. As you point out, it was Paul Volcker allowing interest rates to go up to 18 or 19% that broke the back of the gold rally, because it made other savings and investment products more attractive than gold. I don't see that in the near term. So now, after that soliloquy, let me answer your question. Polite thing to do. I believe that, very similarly to the decade of the 70s, the US dollar will, in the next 10 years, lose 75% of its absolute purchasing power. I believe we'll do that because of on-balance sheet and off-balance sheet deficits in the US government, relative both to gross government income, but also relative to the size of the GDP. I don't think that we have the political will to have a default in terms of off-balance sheet obligations, so I think we'll have a stealth default, a default where we inflate away the net present value of the obligations. I believe further, Michelle, that the decline in the real purchasing power of the U.S. dollar, the absolute decline in the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar, will generate a nominal, which is to say US dollar gold quote, that mirrors the decline in purchasing power. So a 10-year long threefold increase in the gold price, or even a full fourfold increase in the gold price, is something that a reasonable statistician could imagine with a 75% decline in the purchasing power of the US dollar. By absolute purchasing power, I mean the US dollar versus itself, rather than the Canadian dollar, the Swiss franc, or the euros. I think that the US will hold its own against other currencies in relative purchasing power. My friend Doug Casey says the US dollar is the worst currency in the world, with the sole exception of all of the others. And so, well, diversifying out of the dollar into other currencies, I don't think gives people the absolute protection or even the relative protection that maintaining savings in gold would generate. And I absolutely concur with your previous remark, which is to say, since the establishment of the Federal Reserve, the US dollar has lost 97% of its purchasing power. That means there's 3 to go, a little bit at a time. We had a dramatic downshift in the purchasing power of the US dollar in the period 1970 to 1980, a recovery, a percentage recovery, at least in the early part of the decade of the 1980s. And I think that we're headed back into a period where the downward trajectory in the real purchasing power of the US dollar gains momentum. The point of all that is that I'll still get my $4,000 or whatever it is that they give me, but it'll buy what is today $1,000 worth of goods and services. That's what'll happen. And it's not going to be a pleasant place for old codgers like me who don't have other sources of income. For me, it's a subject of amusement or something that I utilize to make a point. There are millions of Americans on fixed income who don't have the ability and haven't planned well enough to augment that income that are going to have an ugly time in the next 10 years. And the ugly time that they have, I think, will have both political and social manifestations. I'm not one who is able to comment on those. I'm only one who is able to comment on how one might diversify one's savings to minimize the bad outcomes. See what I see. I see the dollar being the world's reserve currency for the balance of my lifetime. For the record, I'm a very healthy 72-year-old, and perhaps for the balance of your lifetime. What I also see simultaneously, though, is the declining hegemony of the US dollar. There will be competitors around the edges. I'm an outlier in the gold community in that I don't believe that you will ever see a gold-backed national currency.
Well, gold-linked, gold-backed, not
those
necessarily.
are very, very, very different things. Gold-denominated and gold-backed are very, very different. A gold-backed currency means that you can surrender it and you can receive gold for that. That,
right,
in and of its nature, requires prudent governance.
Sure.
A government that spends within its means and can service its debt. Being a politician in such a circumstance is no fun whatsoever. Can you imagine, as an example, our president being constrained in his big, beautiful budget by how much gold he had in the treasury that he could distribute to U.S. savers? Could you imagine President Xi doing the same thing? People are politicians because they want to exercise power. Gold constrains the politician's power, which is the reason that the people like it. The idea that the politicians would willingly give up the thing that they strive for in life most, which is power, is inconceivable to me. Now, I do believe that individuals can and should have their own gold reserve. I personally save in gold. I maintain liquidity in US dollars. Those are very, very different words. And if you have saved in gold systematically, as I have for 25 years, and you look at the prices of goods and services in 25 years, you are struck by how cheap things are. If by contrast, for that portion of your account that you maintain in dollars, you're struck by how expensive things are. So while at the same time, I don't believe that I will in my lifetime, or you in your lifetime, see gold function as a real reserve currency, which is to say a direct currency, I do believe that individuals can and should structure their own life in a way where, at least with regards to their savings, they monetize their host fiat currency into gold.
Rick Rule isn't sounding alarms for attention. He's warning from experience. He's watched empires rise and fall. And now, he's telling us the US dollar's time may be running out. While most Americans cling to paper promises, Rick is holding real wealth, gold, silver, and the wisdom of what's coming next. Because when a man like Rick Rule says the next financial storm has already begun, ignoring him could cost you everything. So if you found this eye-opening, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon. Because the truth you hear here, you won't find it on mainstream media. Stay alert, stay informed, because the next move in gold could redefine the future of money.